Hello everyone. Let's begin our module 3, which is the last module of chapter number 1, the story of village Palampur of economics. Earlier in our previous two modules, we have basically learned about the various factors of production and how the production can be increased on the same land. So there were two methods through which the production can be increased on the same land. That is by first practicing the multiple cropping, which means growing more than one crop in a year on the same land, and the second was through the modern farming methods. In this module, we will further get into details of the various aspects of village Palampur. In this module, we will be focusing on the various aspects of production, which means land, labor and capital, and how these factors are organized by the people of Palampur. And apart from it, we will be also focusing on the non-farming activities that are practiced by the people of Palampur. Apart from multiple cropping and modern farming methodology, farm production also depends on how much land does a farmer has. Let us now look at the division of cultivable land in Palampur. Not all the people who are engaged in agriculture have sufficient land for cultivation. In Palampur, about 1/3 of the 450 families are landless. That means 150 families, most of them who are Dalits, have no land for the cultivation. Of the remaining families who own land, 240 families cultivate small plots of land less than 2 hectares in size. But cultivation of such small plots doesn't bring adequate income to the farmer's family. Thus, most of the big plots of the land are owned by the rich farmers. The situation in Palampur reflects the general situation of land division across India as shown in the figures. In these figures, you can clearly see that across India, 80% of the farmers are small farmers who cultivate only 36% of total cultivable land in the country, in comparison to 20% of the medium and large farmers who own about 64% of the total cultivable land in India. Thus, you can clearly see that how there is inequality in the division of land, and this situation is basically the situation of all the villages across India, not just of Palampur. After land, labor is the most important requirement for cultivation. Farming requires a great deal of hard work. Small farmers, along with their family, cultivate their own fields. Thus, they provide the labor required for farming themselves. Medium and large farmers hire farm laborers to work on their field. Farm laborers come either from landless families or families cultivating small plots of land. But unlike the big farmers, farm laborers do not have a right over the crops grown on the land. Instead, they are paid wages by the farmer for whom they are working. Wages can be in cash or in kind. That means they can be provided either some cash or they will be provided some part of the crops. Along with the land and labor, now the next important requirement for farming is the capital or the money required for the cultivation. We know that modern farming methods require a farmer to spend more on farming than they used to spend before. Now let us look how the farmers arrange capital for themselves. Most small farmers have to borrow money to arrange for the capital. They borrow from large farmers or the village money lenders or the traders who supplies various inputs for the cultivation. The rate of interest on such loan is very high. They are put in great distress to repay these loans. In contrast to the small farmers, the medium and large farmers have their own savings from farming. They are thus able to arrange for the capital needed for themselves. Now let us look how these farmers have their own savings and why the small farmers have to borrow from others to carry on their farming. Let us suppose that the farmers have produced wheat on their land using the various factors of production. The wheat is harvested and production work is complete. What do the farmers do with the wheat? They retain a part of the wheat for the family's consumption and sell the surplus wheat. Surplus means the extra wheat that they don't require for their family, they sell that in the market. But the small farmers, they don't have any surplus because they have very small plots, and because production is very less, and whatever they produce, it basically gets consumed within their families. But on the other hand, the large farmers produce a lot more than their requirement, and thus they sell the surplus, or we can say the extra that is not consumed by their families, in Raiganj and markets at a good profit, as they have very big land plots, so they can do more agriculture, more production could be made, and thus they sell that into market and earn more money for them, which they further invest in their agriculture to increase their production. Or some of the farmers, they also engage and invest in the non-farming activities in villages. Thus, while rich are getting richer, poor are getting poorer in Palampur, like most of the villages in India. So far, we have learned about farming being the main production activity in Palampur and most of the villages in India. However, one fourth, that is to 25% of population of Palampur, is engaged in non-farm activities as well. Non-farming activities are those activities which are not part of the agriculture or farming. So the non-farming activities include shopkeeping, small scale manufacturing, dairy and transport. Let us study more about them in detail. One of the non-farming activities that are practiced by the people of Palampur is dairy. Dairy basically means the distribution of milk or the products related to milk. Dairy is common activity in many families of Palampur and villages across India. People generally feed their buffaloes on various kinds of grasses and the jowar and bajra that they grow during the rainy season. Later, the milk is sold in Raiganj and the nearby villages. The next non-farming activity is the small-scale manufacturing. Less than 50 people are engaged in manufacturing in Palampur. Manufacturing in Palampur involves simple production methods and is done on a small scale. They are carried out mostly at home or in fields with the help of family labor. This small scale activity includes the crushing of the sugar cane or the processing of sugar cane into jaggery, and later these are sold in the nearby villages and the towns, and a small amount of profit is being made by the villagers. Next non-farming activities is the shopkeeping. People involved in trade, that is the exchange of goods, are not many in Palampur. The traders of Palampur are shopkeepers who buy various goods from wholesale markets in the cities and sell them in the village. You will see small general store in villages selling a wide range of items like rice, wheat, sugar, tea, oil, biscuits, batteries, notebook, etc. These are all included in the shopkeeping. And the other activity that is practiced by the people of Palampur to earn some profit is the transport service. There are a variety of vehicles on the road connecting Palampur to Raiganj, as we have studied earlier, includes the rickshawalas, tongawalas, jeep, tractors, truck drivers, etc. They ferry people and goods from one place to another and in return get paid for it. The number of people involved in transportation has grown over the last years. Thus, we can see that how both farming and non-farming activities are carried out in Palampur. Almost 75% of the population, they practice agriculture activities or the farming activities, and 25% of them are engaged in the non-farming activities. I hope that after studying the story of village Palampur, you might be familiar with some of the basic aspects of the production that are carried in the Indian economy. Also, I wanted to clear some of the doubts that you students have. Students, you are just required to do the question and answers, both solved and unsolved, in your notebook. The notes that are provided to you in the assignment, you are not required to write them. They are basically for your reference. So, use video and the notes given in your assignment for reference work, and for written part, just focus on the solved and the unsolved questions in your assignment. Thank you.